Hi everyone, welcome to our EUCI Lives. We are streaming on LinkedIn and on X. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to have a EUCI team discussion here together with myself, Marina from EUCI, and Vyara. Hi Vyara.
Hi Marina.
So we're going to talk today about the EU Data Union Strategy. It's something that has not been discussed a lot, I would say, especially within the blockchain community. It's something that is pretty important for the European Union. Besides all the regulations we have when it comes to financial regulation or semi-financial regulation like MiCA, we discussed a lot about the anti-money laundering in the past as well. Taxation last week. There's also a lot of things that is related to data. Vyara, why this is important?
That's a great question. Wow, because nowadays everything is data. If you think about it, all our activities can be perceived through the perspective of them being data or generating data or based on the existence and the easy access to data. So whenever we are talking about something as broad as the EU data strategy, basically we're talking about how businesses will be able to operate in the future. So it's extremely interesting, especially from the blockchain point of view, because often people don't really think about the possible solutions that come with blockchain, with the integration of blockchain, public blockchain in particular. And that's something that we want to kind of raise more awareness around, and how blockchain can be used, particularly in instances of AI use, and even solving some of the issues around AI. So I'd say it's one of the most critical frameworks currently in the works by the EU.
And we'll later talk about privacy as well, specifically within the GDPR. You'll have this part and explain that a little better. But as you mentioned, it's something that we usually don't think when we think about blockchain. And it is something that, at least for the European Union, has been important for the previous mandate, for the previous European Commission's mandate, and also this one. And that's why we have this new data strategy discussion. It is important, as you mentioned, for us to raise awareness. So we really wanted to kick this discussion and in a way kickstart any type of opinions you might have, maybe let you think a little bit about it, and then have these discussions in the future as well. This is really just the start for the new strategy. This is why we're opening up right now. We're also going to see a lot of things that might be a little high level, not very concrete, because we're really discussing the strategy right now, and it will become concrete in the next years. But first, we'll start a little bit with the history. And we have a presentation today. It's a little different. It's not like an interview that we usually do, but we have prepared the presentation and we're going to share this right now and share a little bit more on the slides that we prepared and go through that. And we'll discuss this topic for, I would say, for the next 20 to 30 minutes. So in between, as always, if you have any questions, let us know. Type it in the comments and we'll answer your question immediately or even after our presentation. So the first, in a way, thing that we really wanted to share about this data strategy is why it matters. And we discussed that in our introduction, but at the same time, it is important to know that this is, in a way, the next phase of the EU digital governance. It happened before. We did have a data union strategy in the previous mandate, but right now we are rethinking what we have done, what maybe can be improved, and this data strategy is really specific for that. There's a lot of intersections of different rights, infrastructure, and innovation. and it is important for the legal and technical aspects. I think those really go well together, especially if we think about digitalization in general, technology, but also if we think about privacy and encryption. We need to understand the legal and the technical consequences of specific innovations and how they will, in a way, adjust and influence our day-to-day usage of different applications and websites. And it does, as well, as we mentioned, influence blockchain, AI, and also decentralized data ecosystem. This is a big part of, in a way, I would say, decentralized blockchain. It's one of the applications that I think are very important. And this is something that we need to think about, especially if we think about this use case, we have those use cases in mind. In the next slide, we'll see a little bit more of like what happened historically. So we, as I said, we had the European strategy for data in 2020. What happened from then was that there were a lot of new rules, regulations, directives proposed, like the Data Governance Act, the Data Act, ADAS, the AI Act might be directly, indirectly connected as well. And right now we are stopping, the time, looking into what happened, revisiting all the regulations and directives, and then seeing how to move forward with a new data strategy. As you know, it is important for us to know just a little bit about each of these documents. For example, the Data Governance Act is something that we might have not been discussing a lot in the past, but it is important because it facilitates the data sharing between businesses, public bodies as well. And it is important also for the sensitive information. In a way, it introduces data intermediaries as well. And it is aimed to, in a way, build trust in data sharing, overcoming the legal barriers as well as technical ones, in a way to create the EU-wide data market. So that is one important act. And then the Data Act that we have been discussing in the past quite extensively, I would say, because it has this direct provision that is very important for the blockchain ecosystem, because it's the first one that in a way defines a smart contracts. And then in that definition, it also asks for a specific design for a smart contract. The Data Act is a very specific act. It's used for access to data, regulates access to data when it comes to connected devices and services. So that does not mean that all the smart contracts have to be compliant with that specific article in the Data Act, but it's really specific for connected devices, and it's a very specific version, of course, of the usage of the smart contract when it comes to streaming the data from connected devices. So it's again pretty specific. ADAS is something that I would say most of the Europeans already know about, is the new identity system that is going to be pretty important and applied by the end of 2026. So we're going to discuss more about it as well, specifically on how it connects to the usage of the wallet and then identity system, and at the same time, what are the privacy implications of its usage for all the, I would say, European Union citizens, and of course the AI Act. This is something that has been discussed a lot as well, and of course, when it comes to AI, there's a lot of implications on data. So this is a little bit in the past. The next slide is basically discussing a little bit more on what should we look into this data union strategy, or why it is important. So the idea is to coordinate emerging digital laws, enable single market for data, and ensure Europe's competitiveness and, of course, the protection of privacy rights when it comes to governance, infrastructure, access, trust, etc. So there is apparently like a trend where the EU is thinking about a single market. We have this trend when we're discussing the Savings and Investments Union in the past, when it comes to tokenization, when it comes to even crypto assets regulation. We know that MiCA, for example, is a regulation as opposed to a directive. So it's going into a direction of unification. And here we also have this single market for data that is supposed to be a European market. In the next slide, we see a little bit more of like the details of each of the regulations that are already mentioned, and for example, directives as well, the ADAS, AI Act, the Data Act, and FiDA, which is a new proposal now in the process of being finalized and accepted. And it's really about the financial data access. It is important because it is, in certain parts, it could be linked to crypto assets as well, and crypto assets data transaction. But we'll see how it will evolve, because right now it's still in the kind of negotiation processes. So we'll see what the final version of it will be. So this is a presentation about the data strategy, what happened in the past and what we're looking forward. Why we are discussing this topic right now is because there was a consultation that happened just last week. We submitted our responses, and the idea is really for anyone in Brussels to learn more about what the industry has to say. Data, of course, is very broadly affecting any industry. I would say almost any industry, any digital industry, and it is affecting the crypto and blockchain industry as well. That's why we responded. And now we're going to share a little bit more about what our response is about. I'll cover the first part, and then I'll give it to Vyara for the other arguments that we have written in our response. So for us, the very important thing is to acknowledge that there's different systems from what we have been used before. Of course, the decentralized systems, permissionless specifically. So to take into consideration permissionless public blockchains and the way how they are structured and the way how they are designed in order for the new data union strategy to be also aligned with those new features. It has been something that might not have been taken into consideration in the previous data strategy. And I think it's something that we need to look forward, especially when we discuss AI, when we discuss about decentralized AI and all the power structures that are building around that. Another very important thing, and we have been pretty vocal about that in the past, was the GDPR and its implication on blockchains. So how to apply GDPR within a blockchain ecosystem, thinking about all those specifics of how, again, the blockchain, especially the permissionless one, is designed, and what is the data that is flowing through the decentralized permissionless blockchain systems. So that's also something that we're going to cover a little more later with Vyara. Another important thing for us is to safeguard infrastructure neutrality. As we know, it is very important for the public blockchain systems to be neutral, to have this, in a way, neutrality that is one of the very important principles. And thinking about that is also very important, especially if we think about infrastructures with e-privacy, etc. So thinking about the blockchains as a part of the infrastructure of the digital systems. And the last one, it is, of course, to prevent legal fragmentation across the EU data laws. As you have seen, a result of the previous data strategy has been a lot of new laws. And right now, again, it's a time to see how those were applied, how successful they were, and do we have anything that we want to suggest to the EU regulators to improve the current system that we have today. The first pillar, the first part of our answer, of course, is the infrastructure for sovereignty. Right now in the European Union, it is very important to think about infrastructure. We're thinking about cloud, AI, but other parts as well. And we think that the blockchain should be part of this, should be part of the, in a way, European infrastructure that is also part of a global one, especially when it comes to and with a neutrality principle in mind. So when it comes to data sharing and looking into the privacy part, we think that the zero knowledge proofs and other, in a way, encrypting methods are important when it comes to privacy first. And this is something that we might look into and see where this usage could be useful in the data systems that we have today. We're also thinking about different applications that we have today, looking into some examples. Those are pretty important, and see how that could be implemented. But at the same time, we're also looking into AI and the, in a way, interoperability between AI and blockchain, and how blockchain can be helpful with some of the, I would say, challenges that we might have with the AI systems today, specifically when it comes to verification, when it comes to trust, auditability, traceability, etc. We know that blockchain has been put forward as a solution here for many years already, but now is really the time to make it work and to make it, I would say, useful to the point where we might have a very concrete solutions implementing blockchains within AI systems as well. This is the first part. Then I'll let the rest be covered by Vyara.
Thank you so much. And yes, that was already, I would say, the biggest part of this presentation. Now I will go more into the details, because I know as a fact that whenever there is a mention of data in the European Union context, it's very likely that people presume it's about personal data. However, in the context of the data union strategy, it is not about personal data, at least not directly. So what is interesting is that we are observing kind of the shifts in the interests of the policymakers and the focus of the policymakers through their focal points when it comes to different consultations and discussions. And now it's pretty much all about AI. So whatever, and you probably already kind of had the sense from the presentation, part of the presentation by Marina, whatever we were trying to kind of convey as a message, it also touched upon AI and the functionality also of public blockchains and blockchain in particular in general, to ensure that some of the issues around AI are solved. So with that being said, GDPR was also not mentioned in the consultation itself as a document, as a regulation that ought to be changed. However, we use this opportunity to also express some of our visions related to privacy and blockchain, and not just privacy and blockchain, but also privacy and encryption. Because here, whenever we are talking about different aspects of privacy, such as what is considered personal data, what is considered anonymized data, it's very much also about the technical details. It's about what technology is being used in order to, say, anonymize or pseudonymize the data. So in our response, we are using this as an opportunity to also propose certain solutions. So, for example, when we're talking about, okay, what is what needs to be changed, we are saying, yes, with all that being said, with all the technological changes, with all the new technologies that are implemented, such as AI, for example, we also need to figure out a new way to think about privacy and data in this context. Because when the GDPR was drafted, it was 10 years ago, more or less, it was not the same situation as it is right now. So we are proposing, and again, this is our proposal. It has more of the idea of starting a conversation in which you would also become part of. But we are proposing specific changes in, for example, Recital 26 that is talking about anonymization and anonymous data. And we are saying, yes, we know what the original version of the GDPR is saying, that anonymous data is basically data that cannot be traced to the data subject, to the person in any capacity. But now, with all those technological innovations and developments, we want to also propose this concept of functional anonymization that makes it functionally impossible for this data to be connected through the use of different, for example, ways of encryption and just ZK, zero knowledge proofs, and other technical solutions. So we're also, based on that logic, we're also proposing new articles, such as changing the definition of cryptographically protected data, and basically saying that the fact that the data is encrypted should not necessarily mean that it is still personal data, because this is the case under the current version of the GDPR. But we are saying, actually, we need to recognize that this encrypted data might be as good as anonymized, because people are not capable of linking it to any specific person. So that's basically what anonymization should be about. Of course, you can read it yourself, but that's pretty much what we're saying. And it's very much connected to something that we have been vocal about, which is the guidelines by the European Data Protection Board that presented us with a way of thinking about the GDPR when it comes to blockchain, to which we responded. We have been quite vocal about it, but what was particularly problematic was the proposal for the deletion of the blockchains that aren't compliant. So we are kind of expanding on our previous argument, saying, hey, let's not go as far as ask to delete, but let's take a step back and see what we already have as technical solutions that can be recognized as good enough solutions that can also be integrated in the legal text itself, so that we have this certainty. So that's basically our second pillar. Again, we will provide the link under this live to the response so that you can read it yourselves, but pretty much it follows the logic of our previous responses as well. And the third one, again, the infrastructure. We have been mentioning this word infrastructure for quite some, I think, for the whole discussion. And previously, if you also are following our communication channels, it's infrastructure everywhere. And the logic is that indeed blockchain is infrastructure. And why we are paying, like, why are we focusing on that? It's because of something called the Privacy Directive. So the Privacy Directive is older than the GDPR. Basically, a directive that was supposed to be changed with a new e-privacy regulation, which regulation was then shelved. So we are now back to square one with the Privacy Directive still in application. So according to that e-privacy directive, basically, and here there is a quote, that there is this distinction between communication services and network infrastructure. So it presents with this infrastructure, communication infrastructure exemption that also applies to the GDPR. So we are saying, yes, if we follow that same logic, blockchain should also be considered as an infrastructure and not as a service. And whatever is happening on the blockchain layer should be taught from the perspective of like infrastructure dynamics and data being exchanged, rather than any services being provided to between any parties whatsoever. So that's our broader argument. Basically, we need to have this recognition that is already kind of exists based on frameworks such as ADAS, for example, work being done by EPSI that are building the blockchain infrastructure, a regulated one in Europe. So we just want to kind of make sure that this is written down in whatever is going to be proposed to replace the Privacy Directive. So more like blockchains, like cables, the cables that really help us transmit data rather than an actual service. Pillar 4. And here we go into all the details around all the acts. And as Marina mentioned, Data Act, Article 36, smart contracts for in the context of IoT devices, connected devices. So we are again calling for this, if possible. We will not stop asking for this in every chance possible. Just that it's clearer that those smart contracts that they mean under this framework are not the smart contracts that we use, like that we mean when we use that term, because those are fundamentally different things. So we are just calling again for that. If you have been following our Data Act campaign 2 years ago, this is a continuation of this. Basically, we're just using this opportunity to also reiterate our previous requests. And FiDA, as mentioned, is about financial data, building the financial data spaces. The European Union right now is all about building those data spaces on different topics, and FiDA is all about the financial data space. So again, there is this connection between also the Data Act and FiDA, and of course, MiCA, transfer funds regulation, anti-money laundering regulation. And it's extremely confusing right now and extremely burdensome, especially for smaller projects that just need to be able to operate in Europe. So that's why we're calling for this some sort of a sandbox regime for crypto asset service providers, particularly smaller ones, when it comes to these data requirements, data exchange requirements under FiDA. So again, just kind of trying to make things clearer and better aligned rather than making any fundamental changes here. And with that being said, basically that's pretty much the end of our theoretical part. And Marina, happy to have you back. But this is also a call to action to all of you. So happy to connect and discuss this as well.
And this is also one of the first discussions that we have on the data strategy. And it is important, again, as we mentioned, because it's really going to set the strategy for the next few years when it comes to data. And thinking about, blockchain and AI is going to be used in every company, in every software, in everything that we're building. So thinking about the blockchain ecosystem and saying, AI is another problem. It's not our problem. It's going to be a different industry. It might not be. It might be very interlinked to what we're building today. And I think it is also important for the blockchain industry to understand what's going on with data, because as you have seen through the data Act and others in the past, we have been also in a way addressed directly or indirectly, and it is an important thing of course, on top of everything else that is happening in the EU, on top of all the regulation that we have already finalized, and the one that is supposed to be finalized soon, like the anti-money laundering regulation, etc. So we thank you for your attention. We'll discuss with you. You reach out to us anytime through our website, through the Twitter, or any other possible means of communication. We're often organizing events as well. And right now, there's going to be a little bit of a, I would say, break, specifically in Brussels, because of the summer holidays, but we'll be back very soon. And I think from September on, there's going to be a lot of interesting discussions that we will have on various topics related to this industry. Thank you for the discussion, and we're really on time. It was a 30-minute of a presentation, and we hope that you found it interesting.
Thank you for joining. And as Marina mentioned, this will continue, particularly when we have the actual proposal by the Commission that is going to be based on the consultation that was organized by them. So you have a few months to kind of think about it and maybe work on your arguments and get in touch. We can discuss it and we can think of ways to kind of make them broadly heard. So enjoy your summer and let's come back energized because there's quite a lot of work to be done.
Thanks, everyone.